Guys, Friday night here in the UK. Yesterday I did a video on Joseph Parker after his fight with Solomon Hamono, and currently, about 24 hours after that video went up, it's sitting on 3,000 or so views. So I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who checked out that video, to everyone who commented on the video, thumbs up the video, etc. And shout out to everyone from New Zealand who tunes into this channel. I really appreciate it, and it makes my job of running this channel a lot more interesting and a lot more entertaining to have people from the other side of the globe checking in on my stuff. I really appreciate it. After doing that video, I've received a good few messages, and I'll say in excess of half a dozen, specifically asking me to comment about the rumoured next opponent for Joseph Parker, and that is Alexander Dimitrenko. You know, a lot of people thinking it's a good fight for Joseph Parker and asking for my opinion on it. So let me talk through that now. First, let me give you the stats on Alexander Dimitrenko before we move on to my personal opinion. Dimitrenko, a Russian heavyweight, who I believe is listed as being based in Germany. 6'7", so a very, very big guy indeed. Made his pro debut in 2001, has had 40 professional fights. So an experienced pro, a pro who's been a pro for 15 years, a pro who's had 40 fights in the heavyweight division. 34 years old, so no spring chicken, but also certainly not past his sell-by date. BoxRec have him rated as the 49th best heavyweight in the world. I think that's a bit harsh. I'd have him slightly higher than that, actually. In terms of his record, 38 wins, 24 of those coming by KO, so a 60% knockout ratio. 2 losses, with one of the losses coming by KO. And those losses have come at a relatively high level. Eddie Chambers in 2009, where he lost on points by majority decision. Kubrat Pulev in 2012, where he lost by KO. Although, if I recall, having watched that fight, it wasn't exactly a KO as in he was sparked unconscious. You know, it was more him sort of being very, very behind in the fight and losing the will to fight on, for want of a better way of phrasing it. So, yeah, I did a list of the top 30 heavyweights on the planet recently, sort of July 2016 rankings of the top 30. And I didn't actually include Dimitrenko on the list. He was slightly outside my top 30, but he was one of the guys I was debating sneaking in at the bottom. And yeah, I'd probably say I'd have him somewhere like 35th in the division, you know, that sort of thing. I think his record reads very well. Obviously, he's 6'7", 40 fights, 38 wins, relatively high knockout ratio. And he's beaten some guys of note. So if I'm running down his record, he's beaten some semi-recognisable names. He beat Michael Sprott in 2011 when Michael Sprott was a better fighter, a fresher fighter than he is today. He beat Albert Sosnowski. Scrolling back further through his record, he knocked out Derek Rossi, who is a guy we've seen cause trouble to a number of big names like Vyacheslav Glazkov and like Erkan Tepe recently. He knocked out Timo Hoffman earlier on in his career. So there's a few semi-relevant, borderline top 50 names on his resume. I think the problem with Alexander Dimitrenko, in terms of ranking him highly, is that he's never beaten anyone of note. He's never beaten anyone who you could say was a top 20 heavyweight. In my opinion, he's probably never beaten anyone you could say was a top 30, top 40 heavyweight. But nevertheless, he's decent. And when I'm talking about prospects on this channel, be that Joseph Parker, be that Hughie Fury, be that Dillian White, Dimitrenko is often a name I bring up. You know, the current state of the heavyweight division is that it's a division dominated by absolute giants. You've got the likes of Tyson Fury, Vladimir Klitschko, Deontay Wilder at the top of the division. You know, you've got other very big guys coming through. And I often say when a prospect's coming up, they should try and get a fight in the learning fight stage of their career with the likes of an Alexander Ustinov or with the likes of a Dimitrenko. Because it's good to get the experience of fighting a tall opponent, an awkward opponent, and a semi-durable opponent. And I think Alexander Dimitrenko certainly represents that. So for me, if this fight does get made with Joseph Parker, it's a step in the right direction. Yeah, if we look at Joseph Parker's resume, Alexander Dimitrenko for me is less of a fighter than Carlos Takam. Carlos Takam is a better fighter. He's a better all-round fighter to the eye. He's beaten better people. But if we take Takam out of the equation, because I do think I'd pick Takam to beat Dimitrenko, Dimitrenko probably is the second best fighter at this stage of his career that Parker would have been in with. I'd slightly lean to Dimitrenko over the likes of Petaway or Bowie Tupu or Kali Meehan. I think at this stage, Dimitrenko's a little bit ahead of them. He's certainly a good bit ahead of the likes of Solomon Hamono. He's certainly a good bit ahead of the likes of Jason Bergman, Daniel Martz, those kind of guys, if you like. And even though he's lost when he's fought at the higher level, you know, he went the distance with Eddie Chambers. He went very late in the fight with Kubrat Pulev. I can't remember if it was 9 rounds, 10 rounds, 11 rounds, but it was something like that. So the guy's got experience of going late in fights. The guy's got experience of, he's got experience of sharing the ring for multiple rounds with really decent heavyweights. So, you know, I think in that sense it's a positive. Joseph Parker, he's faced tall guys before, don't get me wrong. He hasn't faced a top-tier tall guy. Dimitrenko will be the first top-tier tall man that Joseph Parker has been in with. And I think that experience is certainly key if you're going up against the likes of Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder later on in your career. Dimitrenko may also be, and Dimitrenko isn't a mega puncher in the context of the heavyweight division, he isn't, but Dimitrenko may be one of the better punchers Parker's been in with, because, you know, a lot of the guys Parker's been in with don't really carry the punching power threat of the elite heavyweights out there. You know, this guy yesterday, Solomon Hamono, his trainer was saying he punched like George Foreman. But even looking at him on tape, you could see he lacked elite level punching power. His punches were just too slow. They were too telegraphed, too wide. They came from too far away to generate that much power. You know, so Dimitrenko, he'd be the best big man Parker's been in with. He'd be one of the most experienced guys Parker's been in with. He'd be one of the guys Parker's been in with who's mixed it at the higher levels. He'd carry relevant power. And all in all, I think it's a step in the right direction. And it's a fight that I would applaud, really, for that reason. I think he's likely to take Parker rounds. I think Parker's shown very, very good punching power, you know, on his way up the ranks. My suspicion is that Parker, when he gets to the very top of the heavyweight division, and by the very top I mean when he starts fighting the top 5 or 6 in the world, my suspicion is that his punching power won't look as devastating as it looked in some of his fights on the way up to the top. And I suspect, you know, Dimitrenko is the kind of guy who could take him rounds, potentially take him the distance like Carlos Takam was able to. And I think that all in all means a good learning experience for Joseph Parker. You know, Dimitrenko being the bigger guy, you'd expect him to try and establish his jab. You'd expect him to try and work from range and to keep the fight long. And that will test out Joseph Parker. You know, that will test out some of his head movement, some of his defence, and potentially teach him a few lessons on that side, what's good. I don't think Dimitrenko will necessarily put Joseph Parker on his back foot. I don't think Dimitrenko will necessarily take the fight to the inside, which is another area that Joseph Parker perhaps needs a bit more experience of. It's another area he's perhaps looked a little bit frail in recent fights, but certainly in terms of catching him long and, you know, working on that head movement and upper body movement and being less upright and rigid, Dimitrenko's maybe a kind of opponent who could teach you a few tricks like that, you know, and it could serve to be a good learning experience in that sense. As to how I see the fight going, look, Dimitrenko's decent. I'm not going to be critical of Dimitrenko, but Dimitrenko for me does fall within the category of a good learning fight. And as we've seen already from his resume, he hasn't really beaten anyone in the top 40, 50 heavyweights of note. He's come up short when he's fought the 2 best guys of his opposition, you know, and I suspect at 34, having fought lower level opposition since his loss to Kubrat Pulev. Once again, Joseph Parker will be a step too far for Dimitrenko. I think Parker would have a huge speed advantage. I think he'd probably have a power advantage. He'd certainly have like an athleticism advantage, a hand speed advantage, a punch variety advantage. And I suspect that Joseph Parker would be the superior fighter, the younger man, the more aggressive man. And I suspect Parker would be able to beat Dimitrenko fairly handily. I suspect the fight may well be an easier fight stylistically for Parker than the Takam was. You know, styles make fights. Takam came forward, pushed Joseph Parker back, got the fight up close, got the fight inside, sat on Parker's chest, and certainly to my eye, Parker did not like that. So, doesn't surprise me at all if this fight plays out better for Parker. I think Dimitrenko's more the kind of opponent who's going to allow Parker space, allow him time, allow him that range to get his shots off, which I think he'll like. I also think Dimitrenko being so tall and having that sort of classic boxer style, if you like, maybe open some bodywork from Parker. And Parker doesn't neglect the body, you know, he boxes well to the body. So, yeah, all in all, I'd expect it to be a comfortable win for Parker. I think stylistically the fight would work in his favour. And I also just think Parker's the better fighter. I think he's got a lot of natural advantages, and really I'd expect him to take the win in convincing fashion, albeit in a fight that could go very late or could even go to distance, because Dimitrenko's durable, experienced, and has fought at a high level. Possibly, yeah, he has fought at a higher level than Parker has, in fact. So, in that sense, I applaud it. My comments stand from the video yesterday, regardless of how this fight goes, that I believe a fight in the first quarter of next year against Anthony Joshua is simply going to be too early for Joseph Parker. Now, you guys who've been on my channel for a while know that I'm a fan of Joseph Parker, and you'll also know that I'm somewhat sceptical of Anthony Joshua. Even though I'm British, I'm not overly sold on Joshua. I think Joshua's got holes in his game, and I think Joshua's beatable. I'm not bought into the hype that he's an unbeatable wrecking machine. And you guys know that I've rated Parker and hyped Parker for a good while on this channel. But I'm going to be brutally honest. If Parker fights Joshua in January or February, I think Joshua wins that fight comfortably at this stage. Parker's got a puncher's chance. He hits hard. Joshua's defensively frail. Joshua's slightly untested as well. Certainly untested in the chin department. You know, there's a chance Parker can knock him out. I'm not disputing that. I'm not ignoring that possibility. But realistically, if I had to make a percentage call, I'd make a confident percentage call in favour of Joshua. Because Joshua is a bigger man than Parker. I believe he hits very, very hard. And I just believe Parker is too hittable. You know, people comment on my videos on occasion saying things to the effect of Parker only took 4 punches against Solomon Hamono. Parker only took 5 punches against Jason Bergman. That's not a lot. The truth is, if Jason Bergman or Solomon Hamono are catching you several times, a guy like Anthony Joshua or another top-level heavyweight is going to be catching you very, very regularly. People also make the argument from time to time, Joseph Parker will change levels when he fights a higher level of opposition. Joseph Parker has more to give when he steps up to the top class. You know, potentially there's some truth in that. But as I've said, defence in boxing is instinctive. You know, if you don't have the instinct to move your head, if you don't have the instinct to give a bit of upper body movement, if you don't have the instinct to keep your hands up when you're throwing, it doesn't matter what level you're fighting at. You know, it's not something you switch on or off. It's instinctive, it's natural, it's in your head. And Joseph Parker does not have that natural bobbing and weaving. He doesn't have that natural head movement. He's easy to counterpunch, which ties in with Joshua's style. He's easy to time when he's throwing. And I just think at this point, Joshua would be a bridge too far. I'd like to see him held back for another year or two. I'd like to see him have more learning fights of the Alexander Dimitrenko variety. And then I'd like to see him challenge. But, you know, at this point, let's hope he does well against Dimitrenko. Let's hope that fight gets made. It's a good fight. But it's a confident pick for me right now. And I've flip-flopped. You guys know I've changed my mind. I've had Parker over Joshua at times. But right now, based on Joshua's improvement and based on the flaws in Parker's game, I'm going Joshua. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you press subscribe. Thanks.